What happens when two desperate people meet ghosts? I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I found in my travels. Today, I want to talk about a short story that I read because it is Short Story Tuesday. Pretty high quality short story in my opinion. Even though we're no longer in Spooktober, it turns out this one is spooky flavored. And it's all about ghosts at a ski lodge in during the Great Depression in Oregon. I am referring to The Prospectors by Karen Russell, which was published in 2015 in The New Yorker. For those who don't know, Karen Russell is an American writer, white American writer. They've been writing since, I'd say, the mid-2000s, or at least getting their work published since that time. They've written a novel, some short stories that have been published all around, and some nonfiction as well. And they've won a number of awards for their work, including prizes and grants and all sorts of things like that. This is my first time reading Karen Russell's work, and I really want to read more because this short story was pretty good. A very interesting sort of spin on the sort of traditional ghost story, as what the women in the story have to do to make sure the ghosts don't hurt them is different than what I've read in the past. So I haven't read a lot of short stories like this, and I'll tell you why in the analysis section. So without further ado, let's talk about The Prospectors. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So The Prospectors focuses on Aubrigine, Aubrey, and Clara. They are two pretty close friends who were living together, I believe, in Florida, and Aubrey, I think Aubrey's family fell in hard times during the Depression, so Aubrey took a job at a hotel where she met Clara, and they've sort of been helping each other survive and stealing things in the process. But they've had to go on the run, go out west because they might have been caught at some point. Things are very difficult, but they've heard that there's jobs out west, particularly in Oregon. And so they've been instructed to go to a ski lodge in a city in Oregon in order to sort of take advantage of the job program that Franklin Roosevelt created during the Great Depression during the New Deal. They proceed to go, but they can't seem to find the lodge in particular. They can't find the person who said they would meet them. But eventually, Aubrey and Clara stumble across a ski lift, and they decide that this must take them to the Evergreen Lodge, which they proceed to go up. And then when they get to the top, they are greeted by very strange men who just seem to be behaving behaving in a very strange way. And there doesn't appear to be any of the sort of fancy people. They said that the president was going to be there, but they don't appear to be at this ski lodge. And at one point, one of the strange men says that they're at the Emerald Lodge, which Aubrey realizes at this point that means that something has gone horribly wrong because they were supposed to be at the Evergreen Lodge, and she realizes that the Emerald Lodge was a lodge that got buried under an avalanche a couple of years previously, killing the 30 or so men who were inside. And so now all of these strange men are actually ghosts, and Aubrey realizes that something very bad might happen to them during this time. And Aubrey tells Clara and says that they have to survive until morning so that they can escape down the mountain, and they can't let the men know that they're ghosts because they might react violently. And so they proceed to start dancing with the men, kissing. Aubrey finds herself drawn towards one of the men in particular, and it fills her head with doubts, and she feels like, oh no, I might have died, or I might be in the process of dying. We might never be able to escape this lodge. And Clara, for her part, seems to do some. She vanishes into another room and does something that Aubrey never really asks about later, because she's worried what Clara will tell her. And then when Clara comes back to the main room, she's very angry, and she just finally shouts to all the men, like, "You're ghost. You've been dead this entire time," and they're very angry. They're like, "Shut up! We don't want to hear that." And they seem like they're gonna hurt the women at this point. But then a violent shaking begins affecting the lodge, and the men are like, "Oh no, it's happening again!" Presumably, the avalanche is coming to kill them, which it might do every single night. Now that they're ghost, but they. As the illusion begins falling apart, Clara and Aubergine proceed to flee outside. They steal a very fancy cage with a bird in it for some reason, and they escape down the mountain, presumably to safety, and that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there is quite a bit worth talking about with this short story. It's a very fascinating ghost story in that most ghost stories are about people who don't know that they're dealing with ghosts, or that they're dealing with ghosts and it's too late for them to do anything about it, and at that point they're probably going to die. But here's a ghost story where someone encounters a ghost and they do everything in their power not to let the people know that they're ghosts, that to just sort of help them go through whatever business they're going through. Maybe not as a means to help them like do their unfinished business, as is the case, but more often than not, in this case, it's to survive. It's because if you tell the ghost, it might make them violently angry. So, very fascinating kind of setup to this story. But one of the main themes that Karen Russell is working with is that of doing whatever it takes to survive. Aubrey and Clara are planning to do anything, are willing to do anything to survive in these hard times. It's the Great Depression. Times are not good. They're working from job to job. They're women at this time too, so things. They either have to get married or they have to work on their own. In order to really thrive. And I don't think they're willing to get married for reasons that I'll talk about later. But there's a desire to survive. And what they do is they con men, telling them exactly what they want to hear, laughing at their jokes in order to get like food or money or shelter or anything like that. Stealing from anyone during this time. And unfortunately, I think that's what forced them to leave for Oregon, because in Florida I think someone caught them or blackmailed them, and so they had to move out to Oregon. And then there's that further thing where they sense that there's jobs in Oregon. They sense that the New Deal is kind of going into effect there, and so they proceed to go out there with what little money they have, and it's all because of doing whatever it takes, and all because of survival. And when they get into the Emerald Lodge, where there's ghosts, they realize that they have to do and say anything to keep the ghost happy. They kiss, they dance, they get really close and somewhat intimate with these ghosts to the point where they're unsure, who they actually are. But it's like they're willing to do this because they want to survive. They don't want to be killed by these ghosts. It's just a desire to see the next day, to make it out of this situation alive. So it's a very harrowing experience, very fascinating how like Aubrey sort of develops that mindset that she's kind of dead, or that Clara might be dead, but eventually they're able to kind of break out of that. But what's also interesting is that Aubrey seems to be using Clara here, particularly whenever they like as they're traveling, like she's putting Clara in these unfamiliar situations, like forcing her to flirt with these dudes that they come across so that she can go behind the scenes and steal things. So Clara's doing most of the dirty work, and being put in these uncomfortable situations. And at first Aubrey doesn't think Clara really realizes it, or she's hoping that she doesn't realize it, but in this situation Aubrey has that sudden realization in a very fascinating moment. Allow me to read you a quote from this. "My apology opened outward, a blossoming horror. I used her bruises to justify leaving Florida. I'd used her face to open doors. Greed had convinced me I could take care of her up here. And then I disappeared on her. How long had Clara known what I was doing? I'd barely known myself. And that's really a fascinating quote because it gets at the anything that it takes kind of attitude, where Aubrey kind of has this realization that she's been pushing Clara in these uncomfortable positions, and Clara's kind of been going along with it again because there's a need to survive. But like in this moment of this ghost horror, Aubrey realizes all the awful things that she's been doing, and maybe she might try to not do that in the future. But again, you're still stuck in this Great Depression. You're still stuck in this position where you have to struggle to survive. So I don't know how much this realization is truly going to help you, but it's a very fascinating and well written realization there. And ultimately, I think what Karen Russell might be suggesting is that you do have to take every advantage that you can find, especially in these tough times. But in doing so, it might hurt others, especially those that you're trying to survive with. It's also important to talk about the title here, Prospector, the Prospectors, the concept of prospecting, because in the gold rush times of the San Francisco gold rush and California and then the Alaska gold rush, the original prospectors went west for land as well as valuable resources. They were looking for a better life that maybe they couldn't necessarily find on the East Coast. Aubrey and Clara, similarly, have been traveling to find riches and to survive. Again, they're prospecting by stealing from these more wealthy people who have more than most, or just trying to gain something from these people who used to have more than most. And there's even promise in Oregon. Just as, these prospectors of the past, they found promise in the Alaska Klondike or even the California hills where there was gold, Aubrey and Clara are traveling to Oregon for the promise of a better future through the New Deal, through the Civilian Conservation Corps or something like that. So, different type of prospecting, but very similar. And then it's also worth noting that the ghosts in this story are kind of prospectors, because they were also in the search of a better life through the New Deal and through building this sort of cabin, this sort of lodge on the Oregon mountainside here. And what's more is, I also like the title, Prospectors. If you take that apart, you have Prospector. A specter is a type of ghost, so this is kind of a pun in the title. I really like that. It's interesting to just note that. And I also think that these ghosts are kind of omens for Aubrey, like if you push too far, if you don't think about what you're doing next, you might end up like these ghosts, dead without realizing it, or just sort of wandering around without a real aim. I don't think I don't think Russell was necessarily going that deep, but I do think that it's sort of there that, not only are Aubrey and Clara having these realizations about each other during the course of the story, but they're also realizing what these ghosts can possibly mean for them, and how if they continue on the path that they're going, even though they might not have a choice, it could be disastrous for them. The last thing I want to note is Aubrey and Clara's relationship. It's very interesting in how Karen Russell sort of writes it out. She never names what's going on between them. It seems like they might just be friends, just two very close friends who are traveling the countryside together because that's all they have. Like Clara doesn't want to stay with her father, especially because they've already started stealing things, and that's going to lead to a troubled relationship there. But there's a sense that only they understand each other and they need to be together and sort of help each other and build each other up. But there does seem to be something deeper to that relationship. It seems to be built out of love, a sort of gay relationship. I think I feel like that's what Russell is getting at here, but it's not fully described. Aubrey has no problem with kissing these male ghosts. Maybe it's because, again, she feels like she has to, anything that it takes to survive, even if it doesn't necessarily mesh with your sexuality. She might also be bisexual, but that's probably not the point there. But I feel like these two are together because of love, and they might have been blackmailed because of that, from the hotel. Like someone saw them and was like, I'm gonna blackmail you in this hotel because it's a scandal or something like that. But I don't think it really matters, but this is an interesting sort of relationship and why these two are together, despite the fact that they're kind of using each other in a not very helpful way at times. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Prospectors by Karen Russell. A really solid short story. Just very interesting, very fun to read. I definitely like the twist. I thought that was a pretty fascinating sort of twist on this story. And then how they get out of it is also very interesting. Again, as I noted before, I haven't read a lot of short stories, especially scary short stories that have that sort of element to it, of realizing that there are ghosts present and doing your best not to, give away the reality of the situation, because then, those ghosts might end up hurting you. And then the ending is also pretty strong. So I definitely recommend that you go out and read this. I will link to it in the description. You can find it on the New Yorker. And yeah, I definitely think it's worth reading. So let me know what you think in the comments below, or if you just want to say something about my review here. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about The Prospectors, this story, or this author if they don't already know. Also join the Discord if you want to have further conversations about books, movies, TV, that kind of thing. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and ghostly travels. Farewell.